All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. We have seen the results of the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Now, let's be real clear. Anybody who believes that a woman has a right to choose should not be shocked by what has happened. The right has made perfectly clear what they were going to do. And then, of course, with that ruling, what did Clarence Thomas say? They wanted to go after birth control next. They want to go after everything. You now actually are seeing this. You're seeing states banning what some call the abortion pill or Plan B. You see them, some people want to go after contraception. You even had places like in Florida and other places where they wanted girls to turn in data on their menstrual cycles. Again, what these folks, these so-called family values folks, and remember, these are the same people when it comes to guns, they yell limited government, but on this issue, they want massive amounts of government. It was a huge issue in the 2022 election. Many people believe that it greatly helped Democrats and prevented a massive red wave from taking place across this country. The issue of a woman's right to choose is going to become a major issue in the 2024 election. I keep saying on this show, you cannot be waiting for 2024 before you begin to talk about the election. You must begin to lay the groundwork, the foundation today for next year's election, because it is going to take a lot. Because again, the momentum is picking up. You see the actions that are taking place in various states as a result of that Supreme Court decision. Joining us right now to talk about this further is Alexis McGill Johnson. She is the president and CEO, Planned Parenthood Action Fund and Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Alexis, glad to have you here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. As I said there, this was a major part of the 2022 election, and I dare say it is going to be even bigger come the presidential election next year.
Absolutely. So, Roland, it's so good to be with you. Thank you so much for having me and taking on this conversation. You were absolutely right. In 22, I've been known to say abortion has actually saved our democracy. The fact that people were so fired up after the Constitution undid 50 years of almost 50 years of precedent, taking away our constitutional right to control our own bodies, and also understood it in the context of the rollback of our voting rights and our secure access to participating in democratic elections, changing the way we fundamentally teach history and education. All of these things, I think, intersected, and we know that when the opposition, tried to claim victory after Dobbs, they made it clear that Dobbs wasn't going to go far enough, because returning the decision back to the states when there's no state in the union where these abortion bans are popular, they proclaimed that they were going to make 24 the litmus test for a national abortion ban. So we know they are going to continue to bring it up. They're going to double down, as you mentioned, on all of these crazy bills and bans that they are coming for. And, and I have to believe that the people are going to continue to show up to demonstrate that they are not going to stand for these encroachments upon our bodies for their power and control.
Obviously, you're not going to have the immediate effect of the Dobbs decision. And so from a strategic standpoint, how do you keep this top of mind for folks who next year may decide inflation, who may decide the economy, who may decide other issues are more important?
It's a great question, and I think this is a question that people were asking somewhat in the aftermath already after the Dobbs decision, when we saw inflation go up and when we saw the economy, respond to the inflation concerns. My response to that is that we are seeing the impact of the Dobbs decision. People are making incredible journeys, sometimes upwards of 400 miles one way, just to get access to medication abortion, and having to, get back in time so that they can attend to the children they already have, the elders that are living with them and making the choices that they need to do. We are watching already in real time people who've intended pregnancies that are no longer viable, who are essentially need to have a miscarriage care, abortion care, and they are being told they need to get on planes in order to get that care. Those stories, I think, are forming a really important foundation that will continue to be in people's minds as they go to elections. It's not just as if you take away a right and one day you stop thinking about it, right? It's happening in real time. Our job and our strategy is to continue to keep the issue salient so that these stories are still being told in the context of these bans and in the context of the broader story. One of the things that we saw is Gen Z, millennials, which we know is a generation that is the most diverse generation in our history. They saw the link not just to abortion rights, but to attack and assault on all of the other rights that they know are important to maintain free and authentic lives. They are packing this in. And so, the economy and inflation aren't always the things that are driving. It really is around what is the world that we want to see. And we know that just like 22, 24 is either going to be the end of our democracy or the opportunity for us to continue to realize the progress that we've made towards an inclusive democracy.
State Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, if Democrats regain control, they could have a 4-3 majority. That is huge because of that 1849 law in that state. We see Republicans have taken control of the North Carolina State Supreme Court. So obviously so much attention was focused on the U.S. Supreme Court. What are y'all doing? What are you looking at when it comes to these state courts? And now what we're seeing in the wake of the Dobbs decision?
Well, look, I mean, Roland, I think what it does is it illustrates how important it is to understand where candidates sit on every level of every ballot. Oftentimes, when you are in a election, the state Supreme Court line is all the way at the bottom, or maybe on the back of your ballot sheet, because you're always going in maybe for a federal race, or your governor's race, or your state senator's race, or your mayoral race and your candidates. But those state Supreme Court lines, those elections have become even more important now that we are watching the reality of these states moving to ban or enact further restrictions that are not in alignment with where their state constitutions are, or where the voters have said they would like to be. So in this state of Wisconsin, this state Supreme Court race, there is a candidate, Janet Protasiewicz, who is, an unabashed, very pro-abortion rights, pro-reproductive rights Supreme Court justice. We have seen millions of dollars being poured into a race that normally would not yield that kind of energy, but because, as you said, there is an 1849 law on the books. 1849. We weren't even free, much less, women free. And they are looking to roll us back to 1849 and continue to take our rights away in Wisconsin. So, our energy, the resources that we are investing there look a lot like what you would see in a state or federal campaign. We are mobilizing people, we're engaging folks, we're making sure that they understand what's at stake, and that we can no longer just pay attention to what we would consider top of ballot races. We have to pay attention to what's happening in our state Supreme Courts, our DAs, our prosecutors, local sheriff. All of these races matter now even more because these decisions have been returned to the states.
Last year, I heard a lot of conversation about the impact of the Dobbs decision on Black women and Black communities. Yet when I was having conversations with a lot of Black-owned media outlets, I was not seeing the level of investment on the ground, but also in Black-owned media when it came to advertising. I was seeing things happen other places. What about that? Because the reality is, we know that Black women are the largest Democratic voters. Black men are the second largest Democratic voters. And so if you want to see folks who are pro-choice in office, that's going to mean turning out the two largest blocks of Democratic voters. And so what are those discussions like about the importance of investing in those communities when it comes to messaging, when it comes to talking about this issue? And will there be a concerted effort specifically with Black-owned media for 2024 to reach the individuals who are not necessarily being reached by mainstream media?
Well, thank you for the question, Roland. I think it is critically important. Most of our media decisions have been made on the local level at Planned Parenthood, but I have a national initiative called the Black Health Equity Initiative, resources that we received from a large grant last year that I went to our boarded community and said, I want to spend against what it will mean to turn Planned Parenthood into one of the best places for Black women and femmes to get access to health care. And that means we need to invest in campaigns, we need to invest in media, we need to invest in Black-owned media in ways that demonstrate our commitment to, to the folks who are also trusted messengers in our community. With respect to the broader community, look, I think these are conversations that we need to continue to have. There's always been a false choice, it seems, between turning out a base, which has been taken for granted for decades, if not centuries, as well as or versus turning out the kind of bipartisan voters who straddle the line and live in the suburbs. And I think that we can what we have seen consistently, and I think particularly in the midterms, is that people are crossing party lines, they're crossing generational lines, they're crossing racial and ethnic lines in ways that, because they understand how critical this issue is, not just for their personal autonomy, but also for our democracy in general. And we need to ensure that we are carrying that message to our communities and demonstrating our commitment through those resources.
We'll definitely love to hear more about that Black Women's Health Initiative, because obviously that's, we target Black folks 365, 7 days a week on this show. Rebecca, your question.
Yes, thank you, Alexis. Over the years, I've worked with many candidates, and I've brought them in front of the Planned Parenthood board for endorsements for their campaigns. So my question for you is, especially knowing the role that Black women and Black femmes play in the fight for abortion rights, what is Planned Parenthood's plan for specifically and actively recruiting Black women running for office and supporting them financially? Because that second part is so important, but also the asking Black women, asking Black people, period, to run for office.
It is such a great question. So when we have a political action committee, our federal PAC that endorses candidates on the federal level as the national organization, and I'm really proud of the record we have over the last few years, from the time I was chair until the time I stepped into this role, where the majority of candidates that we have endorsed have been people of color and women and Black women. And we've mobilized the resources that we have in our community towards these candidates and put up very specific links and done all the things to make sure that people have easy access. We're talking through and engaging, all of the candidates, folks like Sherry Beasley in North Carolina, folks like, in Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes. I know he's not a Black woman, but people who are strong reproductive rights folks. I think it becomes even more important for us in this moment to identify in these open seats in these races to build from our bench. We have so many people, Planned Parenthood, I think because of who we are, because of folks who jump into a crisis at any time, are coming in and training and wanting to go out and seek higher office. So we're building that pipeline and also working with our partners across the movements to ensure that we have voices that look like us, that talk like us, that can speak to the complexity of what it means in the Black community to be a supporter of reproductive rights, how it connects to democracy, how it connects to our faith. All of those things are considerations that we are building and developing inside of our Action Fund work.
What
Robert?
is the plan for
I'm
down
sorry.
ballot races? Because you spoke about federal races, but what about down ballot races? When I look at candidates in Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and Texas, where abortion rights, are dwindling.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that we work with our local affiliates to prioritize down ballot races and make sure that they have, the access that they need and the resources that they need to run. I think in general, the importance of down ballot races is now just becoming to the fore for many folks. So, some people come in every 2 years, every 4 years, and they check the top of the ballot. They never move down the ballot. And so our voter guides, continuing to send out through our, communications to our Action Fund members why it is so important to go all the way through. And I think particularly as we see in the Supreme Court race, that, the levers of power cannot shift unless we actually actively participate. So those are conversations that we're actively having with our affiliate partners on the Action Fund side and our community partners and our state and reproductive justice partners.
Robert?
According to some recent polling, between 25 and 30% of Democratic voters consider themselves to be pro-life. The same poll said around 30% of African Americans generally see themselves as being pro-life, and particularly for African American men, nearly 40% or nearly 45% are pro-life. What is being done to help messaging so that they can talk, so that we can better talk to people who vote Democratic, who are part of the base, but who may not be pro-life, to help them understand the issue in a way that isn't, a direct attack, but actually bringing them over to a compromised position so as you don't risk pushing people to a party where they might not agree with anything over the life issue, but where you can build coalitions and find places of compromise to help get the maximum turnout, to get candidates who will vote in your favor, but maybe disagree on certain issues.
That's a great question. I think what we have seen consistently is that the majority of people in each state believe that they believe that Roe should have been the law of the land, and they believe that not because they personally supported abortion rights or they personally supported themselves having abortion, but because they understood that the decision needed to be made by the person who was pregnant, and their partner and their pastor and all of the folks who legitimately need to be in the decision, and not the lawmaker down the street. When you look at these decisions being a function of the power and control of state lawmakers, as opposed to the power that that's what bodily autonomy is. It's our ability to make the decisions about our own bodies and not have the interference of government intervention. That's why we saw a Kansas. That's why we saw a Kentucky. That's why we saw a Michigan in the midterms. You would not have had the varied states behaving in the ways they did in states that seem to lean more Republican, or at least be more purple, because people really bristled at the idea of the government making these decisions for them. And I think we need to continue to lean into that messaging and help people understand that doctors need to be making these decisions with patients, not lawmakers and lawyers.
I got about 90 seconds to run your question.
My question is, how much work is being done about trying to shift the narrative from the way the right and the hard right talks about abortion and Planned Parenthood into making this more of like an education issue about like the fact that so many states that are pushing back against these ideas are like southern states that already have a terrible record with sex education. Has there been any movement on that as far as like making this an education issue outside of just the physical act and the procedure itself?
Of course, no. It's not only do they have the most egregious rates on sex education, and the states where they're only practicing or teaching abstinence in their schools. We also are seeing that many of these bans are the same states where they have the highest maternal mortality rates, the highest infant mortality rates, the lowest well-being rates for children. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to continue to ask these questions, because obviously they continue to hit Black women, more than 3 times in many of these states and cities, who are more likely to die from these causes. And so in many ways, whatever choice we make, whatever choice we make, we are more subject to die as a result of the healthcare system and our inability to make the decisions that are best for our bodies, because our doctors and the hospitals and the people who give information are subject to criminalization. And that's where I think we really need to expand the conversation.
All right, Alexis McGill Johnson, we appreciate you joining us. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much, Roland, and everyone.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.